You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
Live call-in talk show. Dial 1-877-932-9766 and join the conversation here on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Welcome to TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go on the world's greatest radio. You are now in touch with the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is radio the way it should be heard. Now, let me get this out of the way. If you would like to join the conversation, you can by calling 1-877-932-9766. You can also view us on the YouTube channel. Just type in the word YouTube, then type in the word radio. Scroll down to Talktainment, what is that? Talktainment number 2 live on YouTube? Yeah. And I believe that's it. Let's see, I think there's three steps. Just type in Talktainment, then radio, and then there you go, then Talktainment number 2, and then you will see us live. When you do that, hit the like button and the subscribe button. That's 2 ways. And just hit the like, or rather just hit the listen now button and then like and subscribe. We would appreciate that. Also, you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY at gmail.com. Excuse that frog in my throat. Hope we can get through this. Okay, now, very exciting show today. Taken from our Gmail. Somebody asked a profound question, and the question is, how will I know when the system of white supremacy has ended? We will have Mr. Fuller address that. He is live on the line, live from Washington, D.C., and he will address that. But as also, or as is our custom, you may ask any question that you feel to answer, and Mr. Fuller will make suggestion to that. Like to start off by saying thank you for the caller that called before the show about donations. Yes, we are still taking donations, and we thank you for doing that, particularly to keep the second hour of the compensatory concept on the air. We really, really appreciate that, and it's going pretty good. So, excuse me, again, I have a little frog in my throat. Let me introduce to some and present to others Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Mr. Fuller, good morning, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
You are still learning. Okay, good. We're going to talk about, at least starting off, about the end of white supremacy. One of our callers, Angel, wanted to know about that. But before we do have a caller on the line, and as you know, calls come first. So, caller, you are now on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Good morning, Mr. Fuller. Thank you again for taking my call. I took your advice about my evaluation when you told me to go line by line, and it led me to write an investigation through the Department of Education Civil Rights on the violations of law that happened in terms of not giving me access to the curriculum, having me pull students to the library. Okay, but now at this point, I want to ask you something. Okay, you always said never complain, but the actual complaint opens an investigation. So it says request for an investigation. Now at this point, what do you think my action should be?
Well, if you can avoid using the term complaint, you just take the action of calling for an investigation. You just simply say that is a requirement under the Fifth Amendment in the Northwestern Hemisphere of due process. it's called the 3 I's: inquiry, investigation, indictment. You always stay in the inquiry lane. Don't move to the investigation lane or the indictment lane. Indictment means you accuse somebody of something. But you do call for an investigation. You make an inquiry. And your inquiry is what's going on. That's really what you're saying. I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand whether or not due process under what you might call the United States Constitution is the thing that's being used here. I don't see any evidence of that. So I want an investigation to find out if the Constitution is being violated, not your rights, but the Constitution. Now, they use the word complaint, but unless you are told that you have to use the word complaint, then you don't use the word complaint. You're not complaining about anything. You're calling for an investigation of whether or not the Constitution is being violated. That opens the door all the way to the highest courts. That's why I make that suggestion. That's in the northwestern hemisphere. That's not in other parts of the world. That's where you have been told that the Constitution is the law of the land, quote unquote. So you always use the 5th and the 14th Amendments in everything that you do when it looks like something is happening that shouldn't happen, because everything comes under the Constitution. There's no such thing as something not coming under the Constitution. So you stick with that. And anything that you write, anything that you put in writing, always mention the 5th and the 14th Amendments to the Constitution, because that's most likely. If there is any violation, it's going to come under one or both of those amendments to the basic Constitution of the United States, according to what I've been told.
Okay, so tomorrow I have my evaluation conference, and so they've contacted me from the state, and they've said, okay, we're in the investigation process. So now tomorrow I have to meet with my, evaluator from the district, and they're going to go over, and I'm expecting them to say, okay, you're unsatisfactory in this area. I'm just preparing myself for whatever they say.
What have you been charged with?
Discrimination.
No, you have been charged with discrimination?
No, I have started an investigation about that. But what they're trying to say about me is that I'm unsatisfactory as a teacher. Like, I'm completely lost. Like, I don't know what strategies to use. I'm not using appropriate strategies. So that's what she's...
Oh, so you call for an investigation to find out if all of that is true. And if it is, then you find out why is it true, because it could be that what I call the 3 T's under education and under economics: telling, training, and testing. Now, in many job situations, people will tell you to do something, but they don't tell you how to do it. And that's the key. That's how racism is practiced. They'll skip that second T. They'll tell you what they want done and then walk away, and then come back later on, 3 months later, and see if you did it. But they didn't walk you through it. See, that's the training process, because most jobs have a certain way that they go about doing everything. And if they don't fill in all the blanks in where that training is supposed to happen, where they're supposed to actually show you step by step what they want done and how they want you to do it, then that could be a violation of due process, meaning going about doing things the correct way. That's what due process means. Going about doing everything the correct way without skipping over anything or leaving anything out or putting something in that shouldn't be put in. So you call for an investigation to see if all that was done. And the 14th Amendment is equal protection of the law. Now, what that means is, does everybody get the same treatment that way? Did they train someone and didn't train you? And so if everybody's not getting the same training, the same methods used, when it comes to everybody, then that's a possible violation of the Constitution. But you never say that the Constitution is being violated. That's why you call for an investigation, so that the people who are charged with the duty to ensure that on your job situation, the Constitution is not being violated, that's their job. Therefore, you don't accuse anybody of anything. You just want to know, is there probable cause, and you have come to the conclusion, apparently, there's reason to believe, that's what they call probable cause, reason to believe that due process and equal protection was not adhered to, which would be, if it hasn't been, a constitutional violation. But you put that in writing, make a request for an investigation of all of these matters. Don't do a lot of writing. Just make that request. Just 1 or 2 lines, that's it. Call for an investigation to make sure that the 5th and the 14th Amendments of the Constitution in this particular matter were not violated. That's the way you put it in there.
Okay, one last thing. The question was, now that you're telling me, I should ask for training. When I asked my principal, she came into my room and I said, I'm trying to set up my centers. I'm new to this school. I've only been in school for about a week. And I said, I'm trying to set up my centers, can you help me? She looks at me and says, I don't know how I can help you. So she was like, I don't know how I can help you.
Well, that was her answer. So what you do, your help is in the Constitution of the United States, so you have been taught ever since you first went to grade school, what they call elementary school. That's what the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag is all about. That's a guarantee that you will get constitutional help. The whole amendments to what I've been told were written to help the people who can't get help from anybody. Everybody turns their back on you, like in the movie High Noon. I mean, everybody suddenly disappears when you're in trouble. So the Constitution is your court of last resort. And the core of that for black people is the 5th and the 14th Amendments. You might even add 13th Amendment, that slavery is supposed to be abolished. I mean, every now and then you got to put a test to that, too, through an investigation to find out if somebody's trying to still enslave you. I mean, continuous slavery, really, which, according to the code, we are still enslaved, but you don't have to make that remark because that would be an accusation. On a job, you don't make accusations, ever. You call for an investigation of what? To see if the 5th and 14th Amendments have been violated in whatever matter you're bringing to their attention.
Okay.
And just make that request. See, stay in the inquiry lane. Always ask questions and get your answers in writing, including the answer that you gave when the lady said, I can't help you. Because everybody's supposed to get help. When you request help under the Constitution of the United States, somebody's supposed to pay attention, particularly when you're rendering a public service as a teacher.
All righty. 1-877-932-9766 is the number that you can call to get in touch with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Answer your questions, requests with suggestions. Today's subject is, how will I know when the system of white supremacy has ended? That is the focus question today. But before we ask Mr. Fuller to go into that, Talktainment, Talktainmentradio.com is a 24/7, no-charge worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news, lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, and politics. Now, here's one that I'm going to share with you, and it is called All in the Family, with host S. Shalonda Robinson. Now, if you'd like to know what the S stands for, call into the show and she will tell you. But it is an all-inclusive show, bringing out many different points and suggestions in many different areas. And it is exclusive, to Talktainmentradio.com. So just go to the TalkTameRadio.com homepage, click on programs, and there is a list of all the programming that we have. And select the one you want, in this case, All in the Family with S. Yolanda Robinson, and you can see what it's all about. So go to TalkTameRadio.com, click on programs for the scheduled times. Talktainment Radio, that's radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby, ailing a little bit, so I hope you can bear with me. And we are on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. You can get in contact with the show by calling 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com. Okay, Mr. Fuller, Angel wrote that question about when will I know when white supremacy has ended? And she asked me to ask you that. So what say you, Mr. Fuller?
As an individual person, you will know, you can come to that conclusion when you're no longer hearing any reports anywhere about anybody being mistreated based on color, and about anybody that's a non-white person under the system of white supremacy, by the way, and any non-white person not getting, not getting the constructive help that he or she needs. In other words, racism has been replaced with justice. Justice means no person being mistreated, and the person that needs help the most getting the most constructive help in every area of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And as long as you're hearing far or near, directly, indirectly, about somebody, somewhere, being mistreated based on color, then you assume white supremacy is still in operation. All right? That because racism is white supremacy. White supremacy is racism. It's no other form of racism anyway. So any non-white person being mistreated on the basis of color, if you hear about that, you can pretty well assume white supremacy, racism is alive and well, and act accordingly. That's just one person anywhere on the planet. Now that's a pretty stiff order, but it should be, because it shouldn't exist. None of it should exist. None of it should have ever been started. So the people who are still doing it, the people who started it, I mean, that's the criteria that they set for themselves. They shouldn't have started it. They shouldn't have ever even thought up anything like that. And so therefore, the criteria, well, anybody announcing that it's ended, should be pretty high, pretty strict, right down to the wire. No guesswork. As long as you hear a report, just a report, that is still going on, you make the assumption and act accordingly. This war has not ended. Period. It's continuous. Now somebody might say, oh, well, you're talking about with all the people on the planet, no non-white person is being mistreated based on color? I mean, you know, and then say that the entire war is not over? The answer, yes. That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm talking about a complete wipeout of racism. Not one little figment, one little blade of grass of it left anywhere. And if there's any whisper of a report, just a rumor of a report, you can assume this war is still going on. They shouldn't have started it if they didn't want that kind of criteria put on them, because it should be put on them. They started a big mess that has just messed up everything on this planet. Everything is all messed up when it comes to interaction between people. You can't name an area of activity that isn't completely a mess. Economics, education, racism is messed it all up. Sex, religion, it's all messed up because of racism. None of it is the way it ought to be. No area of activity, nowhere on the planet. Why? Because of just one thing primarily, racism in the form of white supremacy. Now that's either true or false.
Yes, sir. Okay, let's go to the Gmails. From Singho says this: Good morning, Mr. Fuller. I have a situation where one of my non-white partners at the job feels very uncomfortable because she works with majority white people. She says that none of the white people at the job are doing anything to mistreat her. However, she remains uneasy. Can you please offer some suggestions or codified responses on how she can handle herself in a more relaxed and constructive way at the workplace among white people? Thank you very much.
Well, she say no one is mistreating her. Racism is about mistreatment. Now, is she saying that she perceives she is being mistreated, but she can't put it into words, or what? Mistreatment is mistreatment. Most people, babies, 4-year-olds, know when you can perceive when some mistreatment is going on. So if there's no mistreatment, then there's no mistreatment on that job. All right? Now, racism runs the entire world, but within the context, if people call you on a job and give you the job, and they say you do this and you do that, and you'll be rewarded, you'll be compensated, then, and they don't do anything to interfere with you on the job or take something from you that you're entitled to, then where is the mistreatment? I mean, if you are just uncomfortable, well, that's nothing you can accuse anybody else of. You're just uncomfortable on the job, and you should ask yourself why you are uncomfortable. You can't ask anybody else that, because if you say there's no mistreatment and no one is taking anything away from you or sealing you off from anything that you think you're entitled to, then you have a situation where you're not being mistreated in that particular situation. Now, overall, worldwide, when you consider the existence of racism, you're mistreated from the day that you were born if you're non-white, because you're born in a prison system called the system of white supremacy. That's a given. But within the rules and regulations that they give in that prison, and you're assigned to a certain job in the prison, and they say that, well, now, what constitutes mistreatment for anybody, white or non-white, on this job would be this, this, and this. Now, if none of those things are happening to you, then why are you uneasy? I mean, just do your job, and that's it. Collect your paycheck. I guess that's what you came there for. Now, if you came there for someone to like you, and sometimes people do. Sometimes people like to socialize, they call it, on the job. You weren't hired on the job unless you were hired on the job for socializing. If that's not a part of the job description, you must socialize. And then somebody needs to describe what they mean by socialize. Do you get on the top of the desk and do a hula dance, or what? What do they mean by socializing? There are some jobs where they say you must be able to interact with people in a relaxed, laid-back manner, some type of vague language like that. That needs to be nailed down to specifics. What do they want you to do? Do they want you to play a banjo or what? All right? And if that's not in your job description and all like that, just go to the job say good morning to people, good evening, do your job, and leave. You came there primarily to get a paycheck. That's most jobs. That's what you're there for, to do the job and get compensated for doing the job that you're assigned to do. Now, the socialization, sometimes people, say, and I've heard black people say that, well, nobody wants to talk to me. Nobody wants to laugh and talk to me. I like to laugh and talk. Well, if that's not in the job description, then you really can't ask for that as a requirement.
Mm-hmm.
Laughing and talking.
So then would that be a situation where you ask questions, for example, what do you want me to do?
Yes.
When do you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, what do you want me to do? Why do you want me to do it? How do you plan for me to do it? And what do you expect the constructive result to be? But the first person you ask that is yourself. What do you want to do on the job? Why do you want to do it? How do you plan to do it? And what do you expect the constructive result to be? And you can also ask that of everybody else. In fact, those are 4 universal every minute that they are breathing.
Yeah, say those 4 again so people can understand what those 4.
Yes, that's in the code book.
Yes, it is.
Yes, and it's called the 4 wants, 4 questions rather, that you ask. That pertain to WANTS, wants. Every creature, every alligator, every snail, every fly, every bird wants to do something every minute that it is breathing.
Yes.
When you're asleep, well, you're asleep, so you don't have any wants because you're asleep. But from the time that you wake up, you say you want to do something. You either want to keep lying there because you say, hey, I'm woke, but I didn't get enough sleep. I'd like to stay here until I fall asleep again. Or you say, I got to get up here and get out of here because I'm going to be late for work if I don't. That's a want, okay? You want to satisfy that want, so you get moving. Every creature wants to do something. So those 4 questions, I'm going to repeat them again,
yes,
that apply every minute of every day to everybody everywhere, including animals and birds and et cetera, et cetera. And that is, again, what do you want to do? Or what do you want me to do if you're asking somebody else? What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? It's the reason why you want to do what you want to do. How do you plan to do it? You should have a plan. That's number 3. And if you don't have a plan, well, you should get one because that's a legitimate question. Should have some kind of plan to do whatever you just, whether you're going to catch the bus or you're going to drive. Some type of plan. And number 4, and this is the bottom line question, what do you expect the constructive result to be? And don't help people with the answer when you ask those 4 questions. Don't interject your own opinions into it or anything like that. Wait for the answers, because there are answers to all 4 of those questions. Even if the answer to the first question, starting right off, is what? The answer to the question, what do you want me to do, or what do you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
The answer could be, I don't know. Okay? All right? Well, then that is the answer to that question.
All righty.
Which means what? That's an indication maybe you should find out.
Okay. Hold on, Mr. Fuller. Hold on to that thought. My name is Mr. Bobby. I am the co-host of the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, and I'd just like to give thanks out to Dr. Harris and my program director in the back who gave me something to take care of my throat. And trust me, I feel much better and much ready to go. All right, we are discussing how will I know when the system of white supremacy has ended. Mr. Fuller is addressing that. But he was on a rant. So, Mr. Fuller, would you like to finish the thought that you had before we had to take the break, or go to a Gmail?
Well, we can go to another email because I've completed that one.
Okay. All righty. Okay. 1-877-932-9766 is the number that you can call. You can also Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. And that is the way that you can get on here. Okay. This comes from who? Anthony. Says, Mr. Fuller, I recently arrived at my 40th breath year on this planet last month, and I have started to receive a lot of pressure from colleagues at work and acquaintances and or people from my dysfunctional unit, he said it's his family in parentheses, to settle down and find someone to marry. I've lived a long time on this planet, and I have never had close interaction with a non-white female that I have truly desired to settle down with her and marry. I quite enjoy my own freedom to do my own activities when I want. I don't like the idea of someone constantly phoning me to find out my whereabouts, and also I have issues with lusting after different women. Mr. Fuller, please, with all your life's experience, observations, and knowledge of this universe, what are your compensatory thoughts and or on the concept of marriage for black males under the system of white supremacy racism? How much emphasis should a black male place on the concept of respect, not lying to oneself, when considering marriage? Mr. Fuller, I look forward to your reply. Kind regards, Anthony.
You have to do whatever you're comfortable with, but you're not going to get it the way it ought to be. You can get it to a level where it's functional. That is, when I say get what the way it ought to be, get any relationship the way it ought to be, particularly this thing called quote-unquote marriage, girlfriend, boyfriend, etc., 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 care mate, which is what the code calls it. You can choose a care mate, a mate that cares for you, and you care for her, according to the code. But do not, under any circumstance, ever expect it to be the way that it should be. You can only get it to a functional level. Why? The white supremacists are not going to allow any non-white person to be in a so-called relationship with another non-white person that is the way it ought to be. That's why white supremacy needs to be eliminated and replaced with a system of justice. They don't allow that. If they allowed that, that would be a huge reason not to even get rid of racism. I mean, why get rid of something that's not giving you a problem? But the racists make sure that all so-called relationships between non-white people are going to be a problem between non-white people. They're not going to be able to get along under this system. That's not happening. Even when we think it's happening, it's not happening. Now, what do I mean by get along? I mean according to the criteria, the way it should be, with people who are in the universe, people who are completely in tune with everything that is constructed in the known universe. And you cannot have a constructive relationship between a black male, for instance, and a black female in a non-constructive society. And the system of white supremacy makes everything non-constructive when it comes to non-white people. So we can reach a level of acceptability, which is what we all do. Everybody's required to do that. But look at it like what it is, a prison system. You can't make a prison system the way that it ought to be other than not have a prison system, an illegitimate prison system. And the system of white supremacy is an illegitimate prison system. So if you're born in that system, everything in it is tainted.
Yes. Mr. Fuller, help me out here. Does that necessarily mean that what the white supremacists have designed is for us not to get along?
Not to get along. So you should be aware that you're not going to. You're not going to get it the way it ought to be.
Okay.
What you would do is just get a sort of low-key level of caring mixed with a whole lot of not caring. That's going to be in there. That's a given. So don't be disappointed when things, never be disappointed in your relationships, because the disappointment is built in before you even get into it. See, this is what frustrates a lot of black people.
Yes.
We think that we reach a certain level, and like the gentleman just said, he's 40 years old, and it's time to make a move where he can now make that major move where he will be what? Presumably happy. That's where that cliche term, you reach a certain level in your existence on this planet, and then you what? Live happily ever after.
No
That's
such.
an old cliche.
Mm-hmm.
You go through this, you go through that, you go here, you go there, you try this, you try that, and finally you reach a point where, boy, boom, eureka, you made it. As of this day, I will be happy. And I will be happy, like the fairy tale books say, I will be happy, quote unquote, ever after.
Okay.
That ain't so. Happiness comes in moments.
Yes.
And the moment you get it, it leaves you. Happiness comes in moments. You'll get a moment of happiness, like the climax in an orgasm, you might say, if you want to make that analogy.
Yeah.
And once you get it, what happens? It disappears.
Disappears.
See, but it will come again. All right? Maybe that's not the best illustration,
But that's, yeah,
but that's an illustration that people can easily understand
Mm-hmm.
who have ever had one. All right?
So do they
You
tell?
get that orgasm, and then the minute you get it, it goes away.
It's gone. Yeah, that's true there.
And I understand the same things happen with certain drugs, which is why people get drugs.
Yes.
You get that peak, and once you get to the top of the mountain, there's nowhere to go but down.
Nowhere.
But you can climb another mountain again. See what I mean?
Yes, sir. Yes,
So relationships are the same way, minute by minute, day by day. You have some moments where you are absolutely ecstatic, and then you have a whole bunch of moments in between where you're not ecstatic. You might not be miserable, but there'll be lots of what you call boredom. You're just flat out bored.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not even interested in the person that you made your commitment to. And that person is not interested in you.
Wow.
All right?
Mm-hmm.
But there will be times again when you are. It'll come again. And then it leaves as fast as it gets there. But that's that way in everything, not just in relationships. It's that way in going on a picnic or anything, or when you sit down to eat a plate of food. I mean, you are carried away while you're eating. But the minute the food is in your stomach, you haven't hit that peak now. You're not tasting those pancakes anymore. Why? Because the pancakes are now in your stomach. So now, if you want to get that thrill again of eating pancakes, what do you have to do? Eat some more pancakes.
Wow. 1-877-932-9766 is the number that you can call, or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY at gmail.com. Before we talk about your book, does that mean, according to what you have suggested, that the white supremacists tell you when you can be happy or instruct you in what you can be happy about?
Black people have been programmed to even stereotype our happiness, and we'll find what we call happiness and a whole bunch of stuff that is absolutely non-constructive.
Okay.
And so that's why we need a code that steers us away from that. The white supremacists lead us
Yes.
into finding happiness in things that are absolutely non-constructive. Drugs is one.
Yes.
Black people all over, everywhere. I don't care where you go. And a lot of white people, but that's how they lead us into it. They do a lot of it. But they'll see to it that we are more affected by it, anything that's non-constructive, than they are.
They design
That's their gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
See, many black people, many non-white people are fooled by that. They'll say, well, white people do this, and you're talking about some white supremacy and whatnot. Yeah, but they don't do as much that is self-destructive as non-white people do. See, we haven't really checked into that.
Mm-hmm.
See, in other words, I'll give one illustration.
Okay.
One old one that's been repeated down through history. The so-called white settler talking to the Indian chief. And he says, look here, chief, you drink water, but I got some fire water here. So I'm going to give you some of this fire water. It'll make you happy, And so what did he do? The white supremacist, he gave the so-called Indian chief that fire water, that water that's got fire in it. And he's sipping it too. He's sipping some, and the chief is sipping some. They're passing the dipper back and forth. But here's what. The Indian chief winds up drunk, whereas that white supremacist settler is still sober. He's drinking too. But like in the movie The Hustler, where it was pointed out, there's a scene in there where it shows two people drinking, and one person says afterwards, after it was all over, said, well, why did you lose the game? Said, because you got drunk. That's why. Said, but that other guy, he was drinking.
Mm-hmm.
They said, yeah, but he knows how to drink.
Wow.
You don't. All right.
Is that the movie with Paul Newman and
yes,
Jackie
that's
Gleason?
the movie with Paul Newman and Jackie Gleason. And when I saw that scene, I thought about going back to the Indians, because Indians everywhere are known for alcohol now.
Yeah, and smoking that peace
pipe. They drank clear water, mountain water and all like that.
Yes.
All right? But the white supremacists gave them what? Rum. And now the image of the drunken Indian is everywhere.
Everywhere.
Okay?
Wow.
But it's on account of the white supremacists. Now, the white supremacists drank too. But they saw to it that the chief was going to get drunk and sign away all his land while he's drunk.
Mm-hmm.
All right? And the white supremacist is getting him to do the signing.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, and then he woke up and said, what the hell happened?
Right. Okay. There you go.
Okay. Okay, TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go. Download the TalkTainmentRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby. I am the co-host on the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. If you'd like to get in contact with the show with a question or a suggestion, you can call 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. But at this particular time, this is the time where Mr. Fuller is going to talk about his book. Please pay attention because you need this book. Mr. Fuller, go ahead, please.
You can get the book by going simply to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is a brief description of the basic textbook, revised, expanded 2016 edition, and in addition to that book, it's in another volume. It's really all one book. But if you're just going to get one book, get the basic book, the revised, expanded edition of the 1984 edition, which is also there because some people have requested that too, for some strange reason of their own. I mean, people have just requested, and I don't know why, but some people have explained. Well, that's the book that they kind of like to have as a reference. even though the revised expanded edition contains just about everything that's in the original edition and has a whole lot more. That's the 2016 edition. But the 1984 edition, some people want that too, for reasons like I said, I don't understand. But then there's the Word Guide that is a direct addition to the 2016 edition. That's also there too. And that shows you how to use words, how not to use words, what questions to ask about when other people use certain words that are vague to you or don't have a clear definition. Because one thing you're trying to eliminate is confusion.
Yes, sir.
That's real important when it comes to replacing racism with justice.
Mm-hmm.
You have to eliminate confusion. Confusion is something that the racists thrive on. So when you're eliminating confusion, you are fighting racism. Anytime you're eliminating any kind of confusion. But you get the basic book that's addressed individual persons, individual victims of racism, and the other 2 volumes by going to producejustice.com.
Okay.
Producejustice.com.
All right.
But if you get the basic book, the 2016, that's the principal book.
Okay. Before we get off of that, I don't know if you were aware of this, and I'm just being made aware of it, but your book has been in the so-called Black European theater. In particular, I just found out that the book, I don't know how they did this, but the book has been got, if there's a word, excuse my English, in Denmark, and I understand also in Sweden, that this has been the situation. I don't know if you have anything to do with that, but your book is getting out. I don't know if it's an underground network or not, but it seems to be getting there because I had a few emails saying that. Do you know anything about that?
Well, I've been told that it is in the UK, and I set it up for it to go to directly to England.
Okay.
And that's what I've been told where it goes overseas. That's the only place overseas. But once it gets to England, I guess people go back and forth a lot.
Yes.
Into England, and it might be that that's how it wound up in Denmark and the Netherlands and places like that.
Yes. Okay, and then the second part of that was somebody asked, some people have problems in reading and was wondering if that particular book in the volumes can be gotten or will be gotten, again, excuse me, my English is not good today, but anyway, could be ascertained by via the audio portions of the book, if there in fact is or is not.
People have asked me that down through the years, but if an audio was done, I would prefer that, that somewhere down the line it could be done, and probably in different languages too.
Oh, yeah.
But I would not like for it to be done by me.
Oh, okay.
One thing, I won't be around that long, I don't think.
Yes, sir.
According to logic and whatnot, to do an audio of my own book. And I have resisted doing that because I didn't want it to be the focus to be on Neely Fuller Jr.
Yes.
I want the focus to be on people learning to empower themselves, trying to get away from this, what you call the Black Messiah image. We have, people who do have that image, and some people do. Well, that's okay, for if that's what they want, that's what they set out to do. I mean, it's all about me, and then, you can only get my message through me. But I say that the message that Neely Fuller puts out, people should go to it directly, because what is the message? I try to act as a signpost to what is already in the universe.
Yes.
That is logic. I say follow logic. Don't follow Neely Fuller nowhere.
Yes,
why?
sir.
Because he's mistake prone. That's why. You don't follow anybody who makes mistakes, because you'll make the same mistakes. That's the logic there.
Okay.
All right? Everybody makes mistakes, I think. I've never met a person or heard of a person who didn't make mistakes, except some people who are considered messiahs or mistake-proof and whatnot, who are in history and in the history books and I don't argue against that. I just say that it's a gamble when somebody comes around and says, I don't ever make a mistake under any circumstance. I'm mistake-proof.
Okay.
Because I don't believe that the average person walking what we call the earth is mistake-proof.
Okay. I don't know.
I'm an average person.
Okay. I've noticed through the Gmails, and I could be really wrong on this, but there seems to be a hunger and thirst after the information that you dispose of in your book, and it seems like the appetite is growing and is insatiable. People really want to do that, and I guess go to great length to get a copy of your book. And I'm even told, even the original edition, I think that is the 1984 edition.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
that's the original in that form.
Mm-hmm.
The original scraps were really just a whole bunch of manuscripts that I carried around in a suitcase. I got it copyrighted like that, which is kind of unique. But it wasn't in a form, in a book form. It was in manuscript form, meaning loose leaf pages. And for years, I carried around the entire code. And actually, it was 1,300 pages at one time in a orange suitcase with a big belt around it because it was bulging so much that I couldn't lock it. And so I had a belt tied around it. I looked like some type of carpetbagger. I mean, every time I would go on a trip. Because I had all these papers scattered all over the place.
Yes.
But then Dr. Francis Cress Wilson helped me to get my first edition out in the 1984 edition.
God rest your soul.
Right, yes.
Yes. Okay. Well, anyway, go to producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen, Mr. Fuller?
And what will come up on the screen is a brief description of the revised, expanded edition of the 1984 edition, even though the 1984 edition is up there.
It's still good, though, isn't it? Irrelevant.
It's still, yes, it's still relevant. But the 2016 edition covers just about everything that's in the 1984 edition. But some people want that too.
Yeah, we just had it on our screen here. The three. There's three books now.
Go to producejustice.com and it's all there, and you can pick what you want.
Okay.
Producejustice.com, and it's addressed to the individual person, to empower the individual person. The concept is, if you solve the problems of each individual person, you solve the problems of all people. That's the concept. So a person becomes an organization within him or herself. You don't have to join anything. Join yourself. Make yourself empowered. Have the answers to the questions that you are seeking yourself by following logic. Logic came with the universe. That way you're not beholden to a person who is vulnerable to making mistakes.
Yes, sir.
Or a person who eventually is going to die. See, I see black people all of my existence on this planet. I've seen people get in a state where they are going to pass away. And everybody's saying, oh, please don't die. Because if you die, we are helpless. Who's going to lead us? Lead yourself. Because the person that you're following is following something. Mm-hmm. Follow whatever they're following.
And
that would be logic. The logic that the creator of this universe put into the universe. What is logic? Cause and effect. Problem solving. That's all it is. Problem solving.
All righty.
Learn how to solve problems.
All right.
You got your own power.
Mr. Fuller, we have to leave that there so we can go with the second hour. So hang on, Mr. Fuller. Hang on, listeners. TalkToHimAtRadio.com, the world's greatest radio the way it should be heard. We will see you or be with you in the next hour.
Thanks for listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller.
Talktainment Radio, worldwide sound. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
Live call-in talk show. Dial 1-877-932-9766 and join the conversation here on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
This is the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
All righty. Welcome to TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go on the world's greatest radio. And that is TalkTainmentRadio.com. Now, you are in touch with the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is radio the way it should be heard. Now, our topic today is was a question from the Gmails, how will I know when the system of white supremacy has ended? And Mr. Fuller went into great detail explaining that in the first hour, so you may want to go back and get that, and we will continue this in the second hour. But hear me on this one right here, including you, Mr. Fuller, and myself. We will have a live show next week, the 19th. Now, please don't get it twisted. We will be here to do a live show with Mr. Fuller on the 19th. Now, the next 2 weeks after that, I know for sure the 26th, and then the week after that, we will not have two shows. So we're going to go 2 weeks without a live show, but there will be replacement shows in those 2 weeks and for 2 hours, so you will get the coverage. So the next live show after the 19th will be 2 weeks after that. So just keep that in mind. You know, some people, even though I tried to explain it, will call the station, or some people even will Gmail me. Now, maybe some didn't, hear the show on playback or podcast, but if you do, this is what's going to happen. We will be here. If everything goes according to plan, we will be here next week, and then we'll be off for a couple of weeks at least for the first of the year, whatever people do, and then we'll come back hitting them hard live in about 2 weeks after the next week's show. So if you got that down, good. This is the California hour, the donation hour. We're going to have I think we're going to have an announcement about donation, and I want to say this. Thank you for your donation. Somebody called even before Mr. Fuller got on this morning and wanted to know how to make the donations and so forth, and it was explained to him how to do that. So, you want to keep on doing that so we can keep this second hour on. Okay, all that out the way. How will I know when the system of white supremacy, racism, has ended, is the topic question. We have a Gmail. Phone lines are open. I beg your pardon. 1-877-932-9766. Gmail me. The numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. Hey, if you want to look at the show, you can by going to YouTube, typing in the word Talktainment, scroll down, and then type in the word radio. And then you'll scroll down again and then type in the word Talktainment number 2, and you are there. While you're there, hit the subscribe button and the like button. Thank you very much. Mr. Fuller, I have a Gmail from Victor. He says this, Mr. Bobby, can you ask Mr. Fuller, how are non-white people created into monsters and monstrosities under the global prison system of white supremacy, racism?
Well, it's just one of many descriptions you can give to non-white people that is non-constructive. Monsters. We fit the description of monsters. when we go around killing people, shooting in the crowds and whatnot on bus stops, young people and some older people, carrying guns for each other, looking in our minds, we're saying somewhere along the line, I'm going to kill somebody black. I'm going to kill somebody that looks like me. We've been trained that way. We look forward to that. We join gangs with that in mind. That's the reason for joining. I'm going to kill somebody that looks like my cousin, looks like me when I look in the mirror. That's what I'm going to do. That's why I'm carrying this 9mm or this 44 Magnum that I got. That is why. That is why I've waited all these years to get up big enough so I can get one and put it in my belt or have it in my jeans or something like that. And at some point, I'm going to open fire on some other black people. Why? Because that's what I have seen happen around here all of my existence, and sooner or later, that's what I'm going to do. That is my mission in life. I don't have another mission other than that. I don't have a plan other than that, because I'm going to wind up doing that. And you look forward to it. And that's the truth. I saw this morning in the Washington Post newspaper, if I looked at it correctly, 64,000 people killed from this type of activity in Brazil. Last year, 2017. That's in this morning's Wednesday, December the 12th, the Washington Post, 64,000 people killed in Brazil alone. Now, Brazil has your largest black population of any place on the planet outside of the so-called African continent. The place called Brazil. Just that place alone. And a huge portion of that casualty rate, those killings, are among the black people in places like Rio, the city of God, right up there in those mountains, on a daily basis. That's a huge number of people. But we look forward to that. That's a part of what we call our culture. Chicago, our culture, black culture, literally, if you tell the truth. In many of these places, black culture is identified by this type of activity or anything else that is non-constructive. Just pick out anything monstrous, because that's how monsters act, very destructive. We act like monsters. Monstrosities, that's the rest of us. The rest of us who are monstrosities, like Neely Fuller, I'm a monstrosity, because just being subject to the system of white supremacy from the time that you are born to the time that you die makes you a monstrosity, because you're not carrying out any kind of mission that you were created for, because you're in a prison system, illegitimate prison system, called the system of white supremacy. You've been convicted before you were born of a crime. The crime of what? Of breathing while black. That's what the system of white supremacy convicts you for. So just being here and being punished for that makes me, by definition, a monstrosity.
Wow.
And then when I get so angry about my situation, not knowing what to do about it, and then pick up a gun or a knife and go out, and because it's easy to do. Yes, that's the reason we do it. It's easy to do. Go out and look for some other people that look like me to kill, because I'm so frustrated about the whole thing. Then I have become that monster. I've gone from monstrosity to monster. I'm already a monstrosity. I'm already weird. I'm already something that really is way out of place and almost practically good for nothing, like they say that we are. Why? Because we are born into a system that makes us that and deliberately designs us to be that.
Okay.
And then get us, not only that, but to brag about it.
Yes, sir.
Which makes us even crazier than we started out being.
But before we take this next call, which is just on the line, the word Chocolate City, which I think was referred to Washington D.C. at one time. I don't think that was necessarily a good line. Was that what is that what Washington was called at one time, Chocolate City?
Oh yes, it was called that because the majority of the people in Washington were black. Because why? The white people moved out. When black people move in, white people in the system of white supremacy say, these people don't bring anything to the table that I need. I have what I need from white people. Just like those black people get everything that they need from white people.
Okay.
So why would a white person want to be around a black person in the first place? Unless they're up to something that they shouldn't be up to, that they can get among black people and do something destructive that nobody will bother them about.
Even with Marion Barry,
people have a reputation for doing nothing that is nothing that is constructive.
Constructive. Yes,
what was the question?
Even with Marion Barry being there, it still didn't make any difference?
Doesn't make any difference because what does a black leader do, so-called, in any position, regardless of the title, president, mayor, whatever? A person who is black in the system of white supremacy is still a prisoner of war.
Okay.
And a prisoner of war has to ask who for whatever he or she gets.
Got it.
The people who run the prison.
Got it. Okay.
That's the way that works.
Okay.
I mean, we don't have any resources just because I have a title. I can have the title of president of the world in the system of white supremacy. But if I'm going to get a light switch to turn on the electricity, or get a boat that's out there in the harbor, or get anything for what you call for quote unquote my people, and that includes all the black people who call themselves leaders, because the code says anybody in the system of white supremacy, all of the leaders of black people are white, no exceptions. No such thing as a black leader in the system of white supremacy. So if you don't have black leaders, what do you have? Spokespersons.
Okay.
Like it says in the code book, Neely Fuller is a spokesperson. Why? I speak. Speak about what? About anything. I'm just speaking. I don't control anything. I don't have any factories.
Yes, sir.
I don't have an army. I don't control myself. I don't know whether or not I'm going to be fed tomorrow. The white supremacists decide whether or not I'm going to have food on the table tomorrow.
All right.
A lot of black people will say, no, my God sees to it that I got food. Well, it seems like God always works through somebody white. Because most black people on this planet are not going to have much of anything if they're not talking to somebody white first,
yes,
along with their God.
Okay. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, you're on with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. What is your questions?
Good morning. This is James, and I'm calling from North Carolina.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Fuller, based on evidence as you know and understand it, since the date of your birth until the present time, has the system of white supremacy increased or decreased in power? If you think it has become more powerful, what evidence can you provide to support your belief? If you think it has become weaker, what evidence can you provide to support your belief?
The system of white supremacy is just the system of white supremacy. That's just frozen. That's absolute. Now, you've had all kind of modifications, but it's just like modifying the same automobile. All right, you put some trimmings on it, and then next year you take them off. Or, a Christmas tree, you decorate it, and then you take the decorations down, but it's still a tree, okay? So you do this and do that, and the white supremacists do that. They have done that ever since the beginning of white supremacy. They have made black people appear to have made what you call progress. But the white supremacist system is designed that when they give you one thing, they take away something. They'll give you one thing that you need, take away something that you need, and then next year they'll give you the same thing back that you had before, and then take away the thing that they gave you last. And they keep doing that. And there's no such thing as progress in the system of white supremacy for the people who are in it. Why? It's just, that's all. Different paint on the wall. You get a different mattress every now and then. You have beans today and cornbread tomorrow, and then beans again, and then maybe a turkey dinner on some days. I mean, that's really a big breakthrough, but you're still a prisoner of war.
Okay. Was that it, James, or did you have a follow-up?
I was just asking that question because I'm trying to determine, if we...
Hello? Hello? Okay, looks like we got disconnected with James. Anyway, TalkTameRadio.com is a 24/7, no-charge, worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news, lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, and politics. Now, here's one that I am going to share with you, and it is called New Money. In this system of racism, white supremacy, you need to know and understand the use of money. And what better way to get that when you get Drew and Janae to describe what's going on with money, what it is, how money works, what do you use it for? You need to know these answers to better position yourself in this system of racism, which is white supremacy. You need to know that. That show is exclusive to TalkTameRadio.com, and all you have to do is go to the TalkTameRadio.com homepage, click on programs for the scheduled times. TalkTameRadio.com. That's radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby. I am the co-host on the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. And our subject today is, how will I know when the system of white supremacy has ended? And that is a very profound question here. Phone lines are now open, and as soon as we can get together with that, my man behind the screen will get the phone call. So don't give up in calling, because he will answer and see what's going on. In the meantime, while he's efforting to get that, let's see here. Okay, we ready for him? Okay. All right, caller, let's go. You are now on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Hello, this is James from North Carolina calling again. For some reason we were disconnected.
Yeah, go ahead with that final question.
Ask Mr. Fuller if he thinks that the people who follow the compensatory concept code are making any significant impact against the system of white supremacy. I just want to see if he can just determine, based on evidence, if we're making any strong headway in our fight to eliminate racism and replace it with a system of justice.
All righty. Mr. Fuller?
It depends on what you want to use as a criteria. Now, the code itself says it's not over until it's over. I think it was a football coach that kind of used to say that. I think that was a coach called Vince Lombardi, and I think he invented that saying. It's not over until it's over. And so I think that is an excellent criteria to measure, quote unquote, progress against racism. It's not over until it's over. In other words, you don't measure progress on the 50-yard line or even on a 99, and 9/10 yardage. It's all end zone. You're not in the end zone, you're not making progress. That's the best way to look at it. So you just do what you can according to the code on a day-to-day basis, minute by minute, and do the best you can in this prison system until the prison system no longer exists. There's no way to break out of the prison. You have to actually dissolve the prison and replace that prison with the system that should have been there in the first place, a system of justice.
Okay, wait a minute.
Yes, sir.
Okay, hold it now. If I could, let me take a little dispute with that. In the movie The Shawshank Redemption, the character, I forgot his name, that played Andy Dufresne. Yeah, he escaped his prison system.
Yes, but see, I'm saying this is a world prison.
Oh, okay,
All
okay,
right?
okay.
So that I always refer to what we call prison as greater confinement. So, but the overall prison system is the entire globe system of white supremacy. So there's no way to go to some island someplace or say, I'm getting out of Chicago and I'm going to Ghana, I'm going to Nigeria, I'm going to Yemen, and you think that you're going to escape the wrath and the power and the destructive brutality of the system of white supremacy. That's an illusion.
Okay.
You can't go anywhere.
So
this planet that the white supremacists do not dominate if you're a person of color.
Okay.
So you have to actually eliminate the system of white supremacy everywhere.
Yes, sir.
In order and replace it with a system of justice.
Okay.
I don't want to replace it with anything other than justice.
Okay.
Right.
Let me ask this. So when Andy Dufresne escaped greater confinement, he was still in confinement, but he just wasn't in greater confinement.
No, Andy Dufresne, by being a white man, for one thing, was out of the prison system, because that is, see, the prison system in that context for a white person is different from it is from a non-white person.
Oh, okay.
The non-white person is always in prison regardless of where you go.
Even when he was invited?
The uniform is with you. Everywhere you go, you're going to be recognized by your uniform as a prisoner of war.
Okay.
A black person standing next to a white person in line in an airport, with the white person is wearing a suit and tie, the black person is wearing a suit and tie. They both have identical suitcases. Real expensive briefcases. They're business people and whatnot. And traveling in business. But what's the difference? The white person is actually a free person. All right? In the system of white supremacy, you are a free person. But the black person standing in front of the white person in that line and dressed in an expensive suit, probably costing more than what the white person has. All right? But that black person has what? A uniform that's not the suit, but his or her skin color.
Okay.
That's the prison uniform. You immediately recognize that person as a prisoner.
Okay.
That's a prisoner of war.
Okay.
That white person is not a prisoner of war.
Okay, let me ask you this then. Okay, Andy invited Red to wherever he was at, but it didn't matter when he got there, he would still be a prisoner. Is that correct?
You better believe it.
Okay.
Anywhere a black person goes, everybody recognizes you as being a black person.
Yeah, that's true.
They see that, and
Okay.
they see what the difference is supposed to be. Your value is way down. You are a prisoner of war. You're a prisoner of the system of white supremacy. You're in captivity, and you should be treated like someone who is in captivity. Even though people talk nice to you and all like that, well, hey, prisoners of war are sometimes talk nice to you.
Yes, sir.
But you're still recognized as a prisoner of war.
Okay. All righty. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, you're on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question?
Hi. Good morning, Mr. Fuller, Mr. Bobby.
Good morning.
Last week, I talked to you guys about being accused of a crime or being accused of shoplifting while black, and I told Mr. Fuller about a black woman who I know who was recently accused, and Mr. Fuller told me that actually recently he was accused But I just wanted to make a quick comment. A few days ago, I was inside a supermarket, and to my surprise, a white man was stopped because he had a juice in his pocket. And it was a Hispanic guard, and he stopped the white male, and he said, "Hey, where'd you get that juice from?" And the white man, he didn't fight, he didn't fuss, he didn't flee, and he simply said, "Hey, I brought this in." And long story short, the guard let him go. So just as Mr. Fuller said, if we don't fight, fuss, or flee, and instead of us making, say, a big fuss and cussing and arguing and doing stuff like that, it would be a lot easier on black people. So the question is if we follow those 3 F's, would our lives be at least simpler and easier under the system, Mr. Fuller?
Well, you look at yourself as what you are, according to logic, and obviously, I say, and the proof of it is you look at us, we're prisoners of war. Prisoners of war should expect to be stopped and questioned by prison guards. A prison guard meaning every person who is classified as white in the system of white supremacy. I mean, that's the authority, being white. That's your authority. You don't need any other authority. And black people have to realize that. That's the way, that's the deal. People don't say that, but that's the truth of the matter. So, if you're stopped as a prisoner of war, prisoner, step forward. You know, what's that you got in your hand here in the prison yard, okay, of white supremacy? All right? So you just simply say, I have this, I have that. Well, where did you get it? You know, talking very harshly to you. You should expect that, you know. Well, I got it from the warden. Oh, well, I don't believe you. Let's walk over to the warden's office and see. So you walk over to the warden's office, you don't fuss, you don't fight, you don't flee. And so the warden says, yes, I gave it to him. He's authorized to have that. All right, okay. I just want you to know that I'm watching you. All right. Well, yeah, that's what you do. You're a white person in the system of white supremacy, and I'm black. Yeah, I expect you to watch me and see that I'm conforming to the system of white supremacy rules. Prisoner of war. That's what I am. I'm not nothing else, even though I like to think of myself as something else. But just because I think it don't make it so. Because they will show you that you are something else other than what you think you are if you're black. And black people shouldn't have to find that out the hard way by saying something like, I'm not paying no attention to you. You don't have no authority to question me. I mean, you know what you can do. I mean, you know. And so if it's a white person, say, yeah, they know what they can do. They can make it harder for you than you already got. And if you want to put that to a test, who's going to come to your rescue? See, that's the one thing that black people don't think about. Who is going to come to your rescue that's got muscle other than another white person?
But if
you challenge white supremacy, you ought to be thinking about that.
Yes.
Yeah, you think that you are bad. All right, yeah, you might be in the hood dealing with other black people. But you get in the space of a white supremacist, the only person that can rescue you from that is another white supremacist who has sympathy for you. And if you don't believe it, put it to a test. Because all of your homies put together are not going to be able to overrule the white supremacists. And if you don't believe it, test it.
All righty. We gotta leave it there. My name is Mr. Bobby, and I am the co-host of The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. And today's question has been, how will I know when the system of white supremacy has ended? That's taken from one of our Gmailers. You can call in with your question at 1-877-932-9766, or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, at gmail.com. And speaking of that, let's go to the Gmails. And Mr. Fuller, this comes from a lady in Spain named Jessica, and she writes this. She said, Mr. Fuller, how about white supremacy outside of the United States, especially in Europe? I have left the United States for good and spent 2 weeks in France and am now in Madrid, Spain. Since being here, I have noticed some strange treatment, but not what you would call overt racism, white supremacy, as compared to the U.S. I have seen white Americans complain about how poorly they are treated in Europe, and some have said that they do not have white privilege here. That said, there are many black Americans and Africans who have stories of racism and discrimination here in Spain and throughout Europe. Many of your methods, Mr. Fuller, of white supremacist confusion seem to center around events in the United States, South Africa, and other regions where the majority is non-white. How does white supremacy, Mr. Fuller, operate in Europe where nearly everyone is white? And do you feel that we, black non-white people, can have a better life in Europe as compared to the countries where the majority is non-white? Thank you for taking my question.
Well, apparently, according to all the evidence, it comes down to what an individual's circumstances are and what you call a better life. Depends on what you're looking for. What do you want? And so some people have found that here in the Northwestern Hemisphere, they got everything that they want. Everything is just fine. I've heard black people right here say, hey, there's no race problem. I mean, you might have a problem, but I don't have one. I'm doing well. Blah, blah, blah. Well, this is true all over the planet. See, it comes down to the individual. What do you think? That's why I wrote my book, for the person who perceives him or herself as a victim of racism.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't perceive yourself as a victim of racism, that you're getting everything that you want, every time you make a move, everything seems to work for you and nobody does anything against you, directly or indirectly, because of color, then you can just roll with that and tell other people how you did it so that they, find that niche and whatnot. But according to the code, you're still in the prison system. See, it depends on what you're looking for in the prison system, because you're still in the prison system. If you're considered as to be classified, it's a reason why a person of color is classified as non-white. Why would you go around and classify people by color in the first place? See, that is the principal question to ask. Why, in a census, in what's considered to be a very intelligent people, or very forward-thinking people, why would they set up a system like in the Northwestern Hemisphere, which is where a lot of people aspire to come to, the Northwestern Hemisphere? Why would you have a census population? A census meaning you go around and look at your population, and then you start putting labels on your population. Why is it the principal label, called a census, is primarily based on what? Color. Look at the latest census. They don't talk about income as being the principal thing, how much money the person makes, or how much education the person has, how many degrees he or she has. It's what color you are. These are the classifications of people. Why would you set up a classification of people? I mean, millions of people, and you're going to classify them as the main thing that you're going to look at. Not something way down on the list, but the main thing, the first thing you're going to look at is what color the person is. How did that come to be? All right? That should be the principal question asked. When you look at a census, you're going to say, okay, you got a population of people here. Now, how how you going? What are you going to measure them by? The age, or or how tall they are, or how much money they make? Oh, we're going to measure them by, and we got a reason for doing it, what color they are. What is their color? All right? That's the main thing. We'll have all kind of other things mixed in there to do what? Cause more confusion. But the main thing we want to point out is what is their color classifications. So I hope that I'm answering the question when I say that.
Okay.
And whether you're in Belgium or France and all like that, they, why is it that color is a factor in anything? The color of a person's skin a factor in anything except in something like dermatology, I think they call it. I mean, the study of the skin.
Yes.
And you might have some skin disease or something like that. But black skin is not a disease. But the white supremacists say that it is. And it's a disease that needs to be exterminated in many cases, or controlled, and keep it from spreading. All right? Why? Because it's the incorrect color. It's not just the skin or the quality of the skin. Skin does what skin does. I mean, it protects the body. I mean, it has pores, and it's different elements that goes in the structure of what we call skin. But the white supremacist said, oh, it's the color of the skin that will determine your fate, will determine how you are to be treated, how you are to be talked to, how much education you're allowed to have, and in what, and how many constructive benefits you're allowed to have, and etc. All of the areas of activity, whom you can have sex with, and how many, and where, and under what circumstances, and keep that under control on account of what? Skin color. That's all. Not where you went to school, or what you learned, or how tall you are, or whether you're male or female. Skin color. That's the main criteria. And then you work from there.
Okay. All righty. Let's go to the phone lines. Okay, caller, you're on with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr.
Hello? Can you hear me?
You're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Oh, hi, my name's Aaron from Spain. I wanted to ask Mr. Fuller, well, first of all, I wanted to thank him for his time. And second of all, I wanted to ask him, how do you think that people who have trauma, mental trauma, from the effects of racism, how do they combat that?
You combat it by understanding. Understanding what? Understanding the system of white supremacy, what it is, and how it works. That's one of the main things I have in the book. I took up a whole page with that one statement. If you don't understand racism, white supremacy, racism is white supremacy. If you don't understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you understand will confuse you. Now, what happens when a person is confused? That's a mental breakdown. If you keep being confused about anything, I don't care what it is, anybody who can come around and confuse you, the more you are confused, the more what happens? The more misery you begin to perceive, the more misery you begin to experience. Confusion brings about that. It brings about destruction. The confusion brings about not construction, but destruction. And that's how you combat anything that's destructive. You deconfuse it. You get to the place you understand it. Have you ever recognized that you get frustrated, you get angry, your mind begins to get in all sorts of disorder, if you are trying to solve a problem, and then someone comes along and says, "Oh, you're trying to open this door. You're confused. You're putting the key in the door, and the key doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And you keep trying it, another key, and that doesn't work, and try another key, and then the person walks up to you and says, 'Oh, I see what's going on here. You got the wrong door.' And then you look up and say, 'Oh, this is door B. It's supposed to be door C. That's why the keys don't work.' Now, immediately what happens? You feel relief. Why? You're not confused anymore. See, what the white supremacists do, they take a non-white person and keep doing things that confuse you, so that you become confused in all 9 areas of activity, and then when they complete that, they got you. Because now you are completely weak and completely dependent on them, and your mind is all messed up because everything comes from the mind. And so now you are completely destroyed, because a completely confused person is a person who has been completely destroyed.
Wow.
Get rid of confusion in answer to your question. Once you understand white supremacy and how it works, you're no longer confused, and everything becomes much easier.
Okay. Aaron, did you have any other questions from Spain before we let you go?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, I didn't want to get too personal with Mr. Fuller, but I wanted to ask him, obviously he lived in a much more difficult age than I'm living, but was there a moment of time, like when he was young, that he felt depressed because of his situation, and how did he come out of that, because say like you're feeling really down, trodden, how did he get out of that space?
Okay. Mr.
I'm
Fuller?
still insane. See, confusion is insanity. That's what confusion is. When you say insane, you're talking about confusion. So I am still insane, but I am not as insane as I was before. Why? Because of the one thing that I said. I understand white supremacy better, which means I understand the world that I'm in better. Once you understand white supremacy, you understand a whole bunch of things about the whole world instantly. Once you understand quite a bit, because I don't know everything that I should know, or we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Exactly.
See, I want to point that out. If I knew everything that I should know about white supremacy would not exist. Because when you know and understand everything about white supremacy, it won't exist. Because you know what to do about it.
Yes, sir.
All right? I'm trying to find what to do about it. But every time I find out how to handle it better and what I'm dealing with, I become a little bit more sane than I was before.
All right.
And this is true of every black person that you encounter. If they act like they have some real sanity, it's because they understand the environment better.
Okay.
And what is their environment? Racism.
Racism. Okay.
When you understand your racism better, you are becoming more and more sane.
Okay. Before we talk about your book, let me take this phone call, and then we'll talk about your book. Go ahead, caller. You're on with Mr. Fuller.
Hello, this is James again, calling from North Carolina. Mr. Fuller, what do you think must be said or done to increase the likelihood that the collective body of non-white people will finally start thinking, speaking, and acting in a compensatory, counter-racist manner?
First of all, it comes back to that word, want, W-A-N-T. They should want to do something other than what they want to do, more than anything else. They should want to replace the system of racism with the system of justice. Now, the average black person walking around on this planet right now has not made that a priority. You should wake up in the morning thinking about what can I do? What can I think about? Where can I go that I can be effective in helping to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice? What can I do today? What can I say today on the job that will help to do that?
Mm-hmm.
To help to promote the production of justice Because when you promote the production of justice, you're automatically eliminating racism.
Yes.
Automatically, without even mentioning racism. And I've told people, even on jobs and whatnot, particularly on a job, don't ever mention racism until somebody else mentions it, okay? But always talk about justice, which means what? Guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help.
Yes.
Now, if you just make that a part of your code, a part of your reason for being, the main reason why you exist, then that's when the changes will come. But what does the average black person really aspire to do? See, it comes from what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
The average black person wants to impress other black people, either with what you know or what you have,
mm-hmm.
or some type of sexual expression, all right? You want to impress the ladies, or if you're homosexual, you want to impress other males with your homosexuality, and that's your priority. You don't have a priority that goes above that. I mean, that's more important than anything else. And the other thing is to belittle other non-white people. The 4 show-offisms.
Yeah,
we want to show off.
Show off, yeah.
Show off to whom? To other black people.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's our priority if we tell the truth. That's why we sit in the beauty parlor and go to the salon and whatnot and get another hair weave and whatnot. We are mostly trying to impress and or show off to other black people. Because you should certainly not showing off anything to white people, because they're not paying no attention to you except to tell you what to do, to get out of the way, if anything.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not impressed by your hairdo or nothing else. So whom are you trying to impress? Other black people.
Other black
people. And as
people.
long as that is the priority of the most of the black people on this planet, they will never, ever get out of the prison of the system of white supremacy. You have to make that the priority.
Yes, sir. Let's take another call. Go ahead, caller, very quickly. You're on with Mr. Fuller.
All right, Dr. Fuller, this is what you would call a VGQ. Most black people think that because they're married that somehow they are operating under the divine wishes and the will of the Creator. But I hate to tell them this. That's just another area of activity that the white supremacists are in complete control of, just like they are in the area, just like they control all the other 9 areas. As for example, who is the most married people in America? People who classify themselves as white. And where did those diamond rings come from that the white woman has on her finger? They come from exploiting, raping the land of South Africa and exploiting cheap labor to the point where the black South Africans were living in one-room shacks without any sewage facilities in South Africa, making no more than $1 a day and spending 6 months a year away from their families. And the white supremacist, he wants to make you think that because he's getting on his knees, presenting some woman with a diamond ring, that he's being righteous. He's a deceiver.
Okay. All righty. You're
and
right.
The Congo.
and the
a
Congo.
lot of other places.
Mm-hmm. Okay, my brother, thank you. That definitely was a VGQ. I think you made mention to that. I think it was last week when you mentioned about blood diamonds, and I went back and looked at that, and it's right there. Blood diamonds. Woo. Anyway, be that as it may. Mr. Fuller, this is the, you got a very short time to speak about your book. I guess we had to put it at the end because the callers were calling in, but speak about your book.
Right. You can get the book briefly by going to producejustice.com. Producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is a brief description of the basic textbook and an addition to the basic textbook called A Compensatory Counter-Racist Codified Word Guide. Shows you how to speak and what words to pay attention to. Sometimes we speak and we're not even paying attention to the words that we're using.
Mm-hmm.
But all words have meanings, and you want to make sure that you know what words mean, because the white supremacists do a whole lot of their mischief, a whole lot of their destructive activities are centered around how they use words. They manipulate people all the time. They destroy people through the use of words. just by, the way that they advertise things sometimes. Use of words. Words advertised. And they'll say that this is great. And if you don't have one of these or two of these, you're nobody. Why? Because I said so. These are words. Okay? So you pay attention to words that you use, words that you don't use, words that seem to have vague meanings, and certainly words to ask hundreds of questions about if necessary. One word. You might ask 5 dozen questions about one word that is being used before you move to the second word, because that one word can mess up everything.
Yes.
Right. And so you can go to producejustice.com and you can get the basic textbook and/or the word guide. Most people get the basic textbook, which is what you would definitely start with. And if you want the additional word guide, it's there too. But go to producejustice.com. There's also, some people want the original to the revised expanded basic edition, and that is the 1984 edition, and that's there too for people who want it. I don't know why that would be, but
Yes.
some people do want that book, even though it's covered. Everything in there, for the most part, is covered in the 2016 edition, the updated version.
Okay.
ProduceJustice.com.
Okay, so as we come to the close of the program, Mr. Fuller, the program started out by asking this question: how will I know when the system of white supremacy has ended? The beginning of your book, you have that statement in there which we read all the time: if you don't understand racism. For those that are new to the show, could you repeat that for them?
That statement?
Yes, sir. Very powerful statement.
Yes. If you do not understand racism, which is white supremacy, or rather the way it is literally, if you do not understand white supremacy, racism, in parentheses, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. And when you're confused about anything, that is a form of insanity. And so it means whatever it is you're confused about is going to be a problem.
So when this...
Because people are not supposed to walk around on this planet and be confused about anything, because confusion brings about destruction.
Okay, so when this question was asked, how will I know when the system of white supremacy has ended, would that statement be sufficient enough to get you started on the pathway?
Well, the actual answer to the question, literally, is that you no longer experience or hear any reports from anybody that some non-white person is being mistreated based on color.
Okay. Sorry, Mr. Fuller, got to leave it there because the